Okay. Well, thank you, Mark, and I appreciate being here and finally having the book out. As he mentioned, I am a recovering journalist, and an old journalism aphorism holds that a primary purpose of journalism is to write the first draft of history. I wrote Overrun in that spirit as a first draft of this particular historic event. And one of the primary missions of the book is to establish, in fact, that this is a historic event in U.S. history. Nothing like this has ever happened to the United States. The mass migration that has happened at the southern border reaches far beyond the threshold of what would qualify as a historic event by every nonpartisan metric, and I mean by the numbers, by the government numbers. So events like that always warrant book writing. Somebody needs to write a book about historic events that are happening. This particular one is still in progress. Makes it a little bit difficult, but we've had 2 years of this to happen, and we need to have comprehension about how we got here so that at some point we can figure out how to get out of this. The subtitle of my book, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History, is supported by the numbers. So I thought I'd take you through some of these numbers. Every record since President Eisenhower established record keeping for this sort of thing in 1960 stands smashed completely. Between 2010 and 2016, Border Patrol apprehensions typically never exceeded 500,000. We might have exceeded that once or twice here and there, but they didn't exceed 400,000 in 2011, 2012, and 2015. But then in 2021, they broke through the ceiling at 1.7 million in a fiscal year and kept going to 2.4 million in fiscal 2022. Mind you, from 400,000 in a typical year, which seems like a lot, at the time seemed like a lot, to 2.4 million. So far in 2023, like I said, this is still ongoing, 874,000 in the first few months. We're on track at that rate to hit 2.8 million if it stays, if we remain at that rate. They've changed rechanneling a little bit through the ports of entry now, so you might not see it like that, but rest assured, just as many people will be crossing through the ports of entry under the new humanitarian parole as would have crossed had they been jumping illegally. To give you some context, a few years ago, the former Secretary of DHS, Jay Johnson, was quoted saying, "If I woke up in the morning and apprehensions were more than 1,000 a day, I was going to have a bad day. We were in real trouble at 1,000 a day." We stand for years now at 7,000 and 8,000 a day. That's history in the making. 200,000 a month. In December, we had 250,000 in a single month. Think of 4 Super Bowl stadiums filled coming through that border every month. 4 Super Bowl stadiums. Border Patrol altogether in the last 24 months has laid hands on a stunning 4.6 million people, 4.6 million times since Inauguration Day. And this traces to Inauguration Day, as I'll explain, and as the book shows. As a defending force, the agency collapsed Border Patrol agency collapsed in retreat so that it could do the administrative processing necessary to move all those people into the country. That left long swaths of the southern border undefended, nobody there. I've been there, I saw it, I've driven it, no Border Patrol. Those are the people that we know about, but there's a whole other segment that we know less about, except that it happened. These are called Gotaways. These are people who are running and got away through those undefended gaps. We can see that in addition to the 4.6 million, we might want to count, conservatively speaking, another 1.5 million who got away through the border, meaning they penetrated past the 100-mile mark and are in the interior of the country. Before the Biden administration, that number might have been 20,000 or 30,000 a month. Now we normally see 60, 70, and 80,000 a month gotaways just coursing through that border. The number who have actually gotten in, remember we've had Title 42, the pandemic era pushback policy for COVID. We were pushing under Trump probably about 88% of everybody who was apprehended back. That changed the day after Biden took office, and actually on Inauguration Day, to where they were opening huge exemptions for certain categories. And so we know that at least 2.4 million were actually allowed into the country in just the first 18 months of the crisis. You can extrapolate beyond that. We lost track of some of the records for that because those came to us via a court case that required the government to report. And that ended in June of last year. So we don't really have a good handle on how many have been allowed in to the country, but that rate indicates at least 6 million people will have joined the United States by the end of Biden's term. That's probably a conservative estimate, given the gotaways, et cetera, and that it may very well be 7 or 8 million over the next 2 years. That is altogether for the 4-year term. That is a mega city on the order of LA and Chicago combined, added to the country. There are other metrics, first time evers, that show that this is history. For example, 295,000 unaccompanied minors have entered. In 2013, they didn't even keep records on that because there were so few. We didn't have unaccompanied minors as a problem. We have had at least 300,000 by now, probably far more. That was by the end of 2022. They're still coming. Never have so many crossed that were not from Mexico or Central America. Nearly 43% of everybody hitting that border are from 150 other countries around the world. I've met personally immigrants from 20 different African countries, from all over the Middle East, from Asia, from the entire world. And Chuck Holton is going to talk more extensively about that traffic and that phenomenon. Never have more on the FBI's terrorism watch list been apprehended. 98 in fiscal 2022, another 51 just so far this year, 14 the year before. That's in the context of gotaways. If you think about 1.5 million people that got through, if we caught 120 or 150 on the terror watch list, how many didn't we catch? Interior deportations. Never has the number of deportations from the U.S. interior fallen so far, so fast. For the first time since federal immigration laws were passed in 1903, a president effectively ended deportation of every kind in America, as it has been known for decades, and left in its place a first ever sanctuary nation. The number of those ordered deported by a judge who got to stay tripled from 70,000 in 2020 to 260,000 by May 2022. Deportations from the interior fell 267,000 in 2019 to 59,000 in 2021. Under Biden, ICE arrested 48% fewer convicted criminals, deported 63% fewer criminals, and issued 46% fewer requests to other law enforcement agencies to detain criminals. I could go on with these numbers. We have never been here in this country. That warrants a book. It also warrants regular media coverage, which we have seen precious little of for such a major transformational event. Never have Mexico's ruthless crime syndicates and their paramilitary forces earned so much money from their control of the crossings and from smuggling. And for the first time in memory, the cartel proceeds from this smuggling event are said to have surpassed those from drug smuggling. And prior to this, they might have made $500 million a year. Now they're up to as high as $13 billion a year. All that money is going to buy what? Weapons, equipment, and influence in Mexico. Not good for U.S. national security. Never has an American president decided, as a matter of national policy, that the executive branch of federal government would abdicate from its congressionally mandated duty, constitutionally mandated duty to follow congressional statutes, to not work against a flooding torrent of humanity across the southern border, and to not try to plug the dam. This is the first time we have ever had a president just simply abdicate from enforcing immigration law on purpose and knowingly. And never have more immigrants died trying to take advantage of the president's unprecedented policies, admitting large categories of border crossers into America. Last year, the United Nations declared the U.S. border the most dangerous in the world. They talked about 1,200 dead up until last year. Chuck's going to tell you about the real number. Why is this happening? So for the book, and as just part of journalistic duty, I was trained in this, I went to the primary sources. The primary source for this book are the immigrants, the people that are crossing, and why they're doing it. What are their calculations and rationale? And to a man, woman, and sometimes child, they cited President Biden's border policies. They said it. It's not me. And I quote them elaborately and at length in the book. What are these policies that we're talking about? Just real quickly, there were a lot, too many to recount here, but I'll name two main ones. One is that the president, when he entered office, decided to open up huge exemptions to Title 42 pushbacks for three main categories: family units, pregnant women, and unaccompanied children. Why did he do that? We're not 100% sure, but we do know that the government of Mexico was watching the American election very closely. And when they saw that and had written a law that, remember that Mexico had been taking untold thousands and thousands of pushbacks from the Trump administration. They had to take care of them. Their law required that they be in detention centers and that they be fed and clothed and taken care of. That was a high maintenance duty, expensive, terrible duty. Nobody in the Mexican government wanted to do this. They wanted to pass that hot potato to the Americans the second they could. So they drafted a law in secrecy, in quiet, and watched the election. And within 72 hours of seeing Joe Biden elected, they passed that law. No press, nothing. And they set a delayed fuse for the implementation of that law to eat up the transition period between Trump and Biden, so that when it had the effect of releasing all of these family units from detention at once. 10 days, with 10 days of Trump's administration to go. Where do you think they went? They headed to the border and they waited for Inauguration Day. And on Inauguration Day, they poured over the border. The administration exempted them from Title 42, which meant that the snowball of that became an avalanche very quickly. The entire world heard about the family units pouring through from Tamaulipas into Texas mainly, and also they were taking women who were 7 months pregnant. So guess what we started to see? And unaccompanied minors, we will leave nobody behind in Mexico to starve to death, they said. They messaged this. What we've seen at the border, and the second thing that they did was, in addition to opening up these massive exemptions, is that they eliminated deportation. So if you want to run and you can get past the Border Patrol, you are enticed to do so, because all you have to do is just get through and you're in. You will not be deported. You will not be detained. This had I'm finishing up here, but this had the effect of two different looks to the border. One is give-ups, huge numbers that were just crossing in and saying, take me in. And they were being put on a conveyor belt into the interior of the country on buses using NGOs. It's a massive operation that's still going on to this day, 7 days a week, 30 days a month. Buses, planes, every which way getting into American cities. But then the other look of this are the runners and the Gotaways, which is another kind of pandemonium, kind of schizophrenic thing that's happening to the border. And Charlotte is in the middle of that. She lives in the middle of that. And she's going to tell us about what that looks like. With that, if I can just, I wanted to just show you just a small smattering, if I've got a few minutes of.
How long is it?
Brian, can we just show the echo? Yeah, A and B. What were they told would happen when they got over here?
¿Qué les dijeron que pasaría cuando llegaron acá?
Legally.
¿Qué les han dicho que puede pasar cuando llegan acá ustedes?
¿Les pueden dar apoyo?
¿Perdón?
¿Les pueden dar apoyo?
Que les pueden dar apoyo. You say then they can be helped.
In what way?
¿En qué manera les pueden dar apoyo?
Dándonos albergue.
Okay, they can give them asylum. Okay.
What do they hope for?
¿Y qué es lo que esperan ustedes que pase después de esto?
Que nos podamos reunir con nuestros familiares que están al otro lado.
Then they can get close to their families.
Did they hear that the new president was going to help them? Is that why they came now?
Preguntan que si escucharon que si el nuevo presidente les iba a poder ayudar si venían para acá.
Sí.
See? Can they talk more about that?
¿Tienen familias ustedes aquí?
Sí.
Okay.
Where did they hear that?
¿Dónde escucharon ustedes que el presidente iba a permitirles estar acá en los Estados Unidos? En la news. Ok, están preguntándolos, ¿verdad? Porque quieren saber por qué está pasando, cómo está pasando toda la situación. Okay.
Did the parents hear that if they brought a child, they would have a better, easier time to get in?
Dice que si como padres escucharon ustedes que si traían a sus hijos iba a ser mucho más fácil para que poder ingresar a los Estados Unidos. ¿Sí escucharon eso? Okay,
Sí.
Porque lo hemos escuchado nosotros también.
Okay, move to the next one. What news were they hearing from the border that made them all of a sudden decide to leave? What
¿Escucharon
news?
algo en las noticias o en redes sociales de que la frontera está abierta y decidieron venirse?
Sí,
Sí,
estaban
pasaron
ayudando,
varios conocidos.
estaban ayudando a
Yes,
los
that they were helping the
venezolanos.
Venezuelans.
Y ya veníamos con tanta ilusión, hermano, con tanta fuerza, esperanza, que apenas salimos de la selva nos apagaron todos nuestros sueños, ¿no?
Yeah, so we had heard that they were helping the Venezuelans, and that's when we sold everything. We're already in transit. We had just crossed the Daring Gap, and that's when we heard that they were applying Title 42 to Venezuelans.
What kind of help did he hear when he says help? What does he mean by help? The
Cuando
Americans
te
help.
refieres de que les están dando ayuda, ¿a qué te refieres?
Que los estaban dejando ingresar al país.
Or that they were letting us into the country.
Ah,
lo estaban apoyando, no nos estaban repulsando.
that they weren't being expelled.
Decidimos vender nuestras casas, nuestras cosas y todos nuestros corotos para correr atrás de esos sueños de cualquier persona, hermano.
Yeah, and that's when we heard that they were allowing Venezuelans to enter the U.S. That's when we decided to sell everything and make the journey.
Okay.
Okay,
Pass the dais.
thank you, Todd. And as you can see from the videos and as from Todd's comments, this is a reported book. This isn't kind of just a wonky book. There's wonkiness in it. There's tables, a couple of them anyway. But this is Todd talking to actual people and reporting on what's going on. I especially like right at the beginning, he has relates a conversation with a coke-snorting illegal alien border guide leading people across the river, which was a colorful scene, but he's run into a lot of that stuff.